Scott, he reminded me.
Oh,
You just
okay, great. I
mentioned
didn't see that.
that.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I heard about it from one of your other attendants there, Kim Clark, who's part of our vegan meetup group, and she recommended it. So that's why I'm here.
Well, welcome.
Thank
We're
you.
thrilled to have you. And of course, Kim, you've been a big promoter for a long, long time, and we really appreciate that. You know, Kim's not from Eugene, Springfield, from California, and I hope you're not anywhere near the fires. No, good. And
Not
I
near
hope,
the fires. We're up north near San Francisco.
oh, good, good.
We're safe for now.
Yeah, I have a cousin who lost his home of 11 years in the fire, and another cousin who her home is at risk tonight. She's been about my age and just kind of on pins and needles, has her bags packed, and
That's so
she'll see
sad.
what happens.
So
Yeah,
heartbreaking.
it's pretty
I have a
brutal down
cousin
there.
down there.
All right, anybody else who's new to this group or to the meetings, feel free to just unmute yourself and say hello. I see KFI's unmuted.
Yes, hi, I'm Karen Judd, and I too have been recommended through Kim Clark. So she's a popular person.
Kim, we're gonna make you the manager of referrals here.
Oh, yeah, I've been meaning to join for some time, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, welcome. Glad to have you. And again, uh, you can speak up, ask questions, whatever it is. That's what we're here for.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else new or want to share anything that's on your mind? Okay, Jamie.
Not new, but thanks for the recommendation of the book. I'll start reading it soon.
Okay, this is the Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. It was the book that helped my wife and myself on the path to what we're doing, and likely why I'm talking with you here tonight, actually.
Because a good blood vessel is a bad thing to waste.
Very good. Okay, anybody else have anything else that they want to share? Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Hiltz, and I came to the in-person classes before, and I've been kind of gone and busy some. And anyway, I'm back. Just wanted to say hi to everybody, and I'm looking forward to learning more. And I'm also interested in learning more to do with brain health as well. My cousin is having issues with his brain health, so I'm like, oh wait, I know I saw something about that. So I'm back, and I'm really trying to get on the eating plan for the first time now.
Well, welcome back. And,
Thank you.
you know, we'll support you as best as we can. The whole group is here to support each other. For some, it's a little easier. For others, it's a lot harder. You know, we all have kind of different, but ways of helping ourselves get to the place of health. And hopefully you'll find that this is supportive for you, and we're not judging. We don't give tickets. We don't have any expectations. Just listen to the science, make decisions what you want to do for your life.
Yeah, and
And
I really love to listen to the exam room too. A lot of times at night, I fall asleep listening to the exam room with Chuck Carroll. So anyway, I've been really learning a lot over the last year or so. I've been here in Oregon for a year now, and I'm just kind of still finding my way around, and I'm excited to be back here. Thank you.
well, thank you for sharing that about the podcast. It is excellent. The Physician Committee for Responsible Medicine, www.pcrm.org, is a wonderful site. And their podcast is really beneficial. It's evidence-based, and I'll second the motion that it's a great thing to watch. Okay, Kim.
I have a link to the podcast on the website also, that podcast.
Okay, and Scott may, since we have so many new people, we may kind of go to that briefly in a moment. Let me get Kim, and then I want to introduce Lisa to let her share a little bit if she'd like, unless she's just hidden in the background. Kim.
I just wanted to say that I got a notice from Starbucks. I don't usually go to Starbucks or those kind of places, but they have a vegan. Finally, they have a vegan like the little sandwich falafel wrap. So that was good news. And also, they're not charging extra for plant milk. So I think we should ask all the coffee shops when we go to get coffee and we order plant milk, just show our outrage at how they're charging extra for plant milk. So that's just a little plug. I don't really want to plug those kind of places, but I think we do have to support it when they do something that's favorable to, the planet. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just saw on the news tonight about how Starbucks is saying you need to be a paying customer if you're going to be using their facility, and that includes the bathrooms tonight. I don't know if that's just Oregon, but it might be throughout. Just a meaningless piece of information for you, maybe. Now, the next person I want to introduce to you is our most favorite medical student. And we're fortunate that she's chosen a 5-year program instead of 4 years, because we would have lost her into the residency. And so now we're fortunate to have an extra year with this very inspiring and I don't know what I can say more heartfelt, that we really love this medical student who's been so supportive, who started Facebook with Vonda, who does her book club, who teaches other medical students, and who's been doing counseling. And I don't know what more I can say other than you deserve a medal, Lisa, but introduce yourself.
Well, the letter of recommendation was plenty, so thanks, Dr. Ross. Hi, everyone. It feels like such a long time since I've been on the Zoom call, but it's good to see some faces and some new faces. I go to medical school at Western University down in the Los Angeles campus, but that is how I got to know Dr. Ross, through our sister campus in Oregon. And for the last few years, I've been able to learn a lot more about lifestyle medicine. And then I wanted to share that and pass it along. So I've been doing volunteer health coaching, and that's available for anybody if you feel like you need some more specific guidance or motivation. Right now, I am actually rotating a lifestyle medicine rotation at Loma Linda, which is one of the blue zones. So it's been really fun, and I'm learning a lot. It's my second week out of 4, and I'm happy to share more about it. We also have our book club, like Dr. Ross mentioned, that will be meeting next week on Thursday, on the 23rd. So I'll put my email in the chat, and if you're interested in the book club or health coaching, you can just email me, and I'm excited to get to know you all.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And I'm muting most everybody else, but I surely do not want to forget, nor do I want to leave in the background, the most important partner in crime, so to speak, of what we're doing, and that's Scott Wagner. He is the one who has inspired me to go on and get my certification in lifestyle medicine after he did it first. And we've been teaching classes together for a long, long time. And we're very grateful to be working with him. So he's been keeping up the website, Live Lifestyle Medicine, which most of you have been using for your references to what class is next. And Scott, I don't know if you want to say any words or just share the website or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I think most everyone knows me, but yeah, I'm Scott Wagner, physician associate. And if there is a couple of new people, I'll and I made a few changes to the website. I can show everyone the website. You want, if that would be
Okay,
helpful.
should I just make you a co-host?
I think I can share without it, can I? Let me see. At least we got that part fixed. You can still see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay. So here's the website, livelifestylemedicine.com. So the main thing to do, I won't spend a bunch of time here, but I just want to show you on the homepage here. Recommend going down, if you're new to this website, scroll down to the website tutorial right here and just watch this. It's a 14-minute video of me giving you a full tour of this website. So I don't have to spend a bunch of time in class time tonight doing that. So check that out and do that. And then down at the bottom here is the class schedule. So you can see that here. And then since I mentioned it earlier, the podcast, we were talking about the exam room podcast. So if you go to the resources section and scroll down, you'll get down to where we have the podcasts. Here are the different podcasts. There's exam room podcast by Chuck Carroll and some other ones here. And these are the links to the Apple podcast, but many of these are also available on iHeartRadio and Spotify. So if you're a podcast person, you can check those out. But I just wanted to mention that, and also subscribing to the weekly class newsletter if you haven't yet, because then you'll receive a welcome newsletter, and then every Sunday morning you get a newsletter with all kinds of information in it, including the link to scheduling with Lisa for free health coaching and all the other things we have going on and there. And so definitely subscribe to the newsletter. And if you don't receive the welcome newsletter right away and the Sunday morning newsletter every week, definitely check your junk file. I even have a warning about that here, because sometimes it goes to your spam folder, your junk file, because it's through a MailChimp account. So those are the two main things. But otherwise, yeah, scroll down, watch the tutorial. The last class is always posted here. There's last week's class. So if you missed last week, you can just click here and actually watch it. And then I go way more in depth on this website where you can see the older class archives, and so I won't spend time on that now. But so yeah, I hope you get some benefit out of the livelifestylemedicine.com website. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And so now we're going to see any last questions before we get on to autoimmune type 2 or session 2, along with some other disorders, which are not necessarily autoimmune, like fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis. Yes, Doug. Unmute yourself. Let's see. I'm going to ask to have you unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
I got a couple of Dr. Goldner's books, and my wife and I were eating tons of greens, about half of what she recommended. And I read somewhere, that it opens up blood vessels. Does it expand blood vessels, or does it clear out blood vessels? Because I have AAA, and I don't want to, it seemed like I have some blood vessels that are very apparent on the back of one of my hands, and look like they might have swollen up a little bit. It might have been my imagination.
Yeah.
Have you ever read anything about that?
So the dark green leafies combine with the saliva, and they produce a chemical called nitric oxide. That nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It relaxes your arteries. I think it also helps the body's healing process. So I think a totally whole food, plant-based diet has been shown to actually unclog coronary arteries, reversing the narrowing or clogging within arteries. It's not like a 50% amount, but it's a visible amount. And so I haven't seen any study that would be detrimental if you have a AAA to be doing totally whole food, plant-based. I think the advantages likely far outweigh any disadvantages that you may incur. So I don't know, Scott, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, it can only be helpful. So it's because it's going to lower your blood pressure. So when you have a AAA, abdominal aortic aneurysm, you have this bulging weak spot in your abdominal aorta, and it bulges out. And so when we are monitoring those, we want to make sure they're not getting bigger and bigger, the actual aneurysm. If they get to a certain size, then they want to operate on it. But in the meantime, what they tell you to do is not smoke, keep your blood pressure under good control. And by eating a heart healthy, whole food, plant-based diet and increasing the nitric oxide, it's not going to make the aneurysm bigger. It's just going to make your artery walls more elastic and healthier. And so it's going to only be good for your blood vessels. And keep that blood pressure low and all of those kinds of things. But it's not like it's going to, again, like Charlie said, I haven't seen these studies that's going to make it more likely to burst or bleed but it's also on the flip side of that, it's also not going to make the aneurysm go away. So it's not going to fix it, but it's going to, it's only going to do good things to help prevent you having any problems from that aneurysm. If that makes sense.
Okay.
And welcome back, Doug.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've seen you. Like to see that. All right. I'm going to get on to multiple sclerosis as our first video. We'll have other time for questioning for those of you who haven't had your question answered yet. It's only because you haven't had it answered yet. We still have a way to go for the night. And so I'm going to share my screen here. And we're going to share the sound and optimize the video clips. And then we're going to go, if I can find the video clips, I just need to and I'm going to ask, I guess I'm not going to ask, I'm just going to mute everybody's, I'm going to mute everybody's microphone here. I know it's hard to remember that. So I'm muting everybody now. Okay, that way the room can stay quiet while we're listening to these videos. I'm going to, go back to the share. And then I'm going to cut that back. And I think you can see my screen now, I hope. And I'm going to, okay, good. I'm going to go over to my hard drive. It's a complicated life that I have here. And then I've got to go over to the videos. Let's see, tip class videos and the autoimmune. We'll get to thyroid in a bit. Let's start with multiple sclerosis. Here we go.
Multiple sclerosis is an unpredictable and frightening degenerative autoimmune inflammatory disease of the central nervous system in which our body attacks our own nerves. It often strikes in the prime of life and can cause symptoms in the brain, cognitive impairment in the eye, painful loss of vision, tremor, weakness, loss of bladder control, pain, and fatigue. The most frequently prescribed drug for multiple sclerosis is beta interferon, which can make you feel lousy and cost $30,000 a year, but hey, it might be worthwhile if it actually worked. We learned last year that it doesn't seem to prevent or delay long-term disability. That leaves chemo drugs like mitoxantrone that causes irreversible heart damage in 1 out of every 8 people who go on the drug, and treatment-related acute leukemia. It causes leukemia in nearly 1% of people who take it. But hey, MS is no walk in the park. If only there was a cheap, simple, safe, side effect-free solution that also just so happened to be the most effective treatment for MS ever described. Dr. Roy Swank, who we lost at age 99, was a distinguished neurologist whose research culminated in over 170 scientific papers. Let's look at a few. As far back as 1950, we knew that there were areas in the world that had a lot of MS, North America, Europe, and other places, Africa and Asia, that hardly had any. And now we have all these migration studies showing that if you move from a high-risk area to a low-risk area, your risk drops, and vice versa. So it seemed less genetics and more lifestyle. Dr. Swank had an idea, as he recounted in an interview with Dr. John McDougall at the ripe young age of 84.
It seemed possible to me that this could be a matter of food, because the further north you go, the less vegetarian life is led, and the more people are carnivores, you might say. They spend a lot more time eating meat.
After looking at the multiple sclerosis data from World War II in occupied countries where meat and dairy were rationed, and his famous study in '52 finding the frequency of MS directly related to the amount of saturated animal fat consumed daily in different areas of Norway, he concluded it might be the animal fat, so he decided to put it to the test by restricting people's intake of saturated animal fat. Here's his first 47 patients, before cutting out about 90% of the saturated fat from their diet, and here's after, showing a decrease in both the frequency and severity of MS attacks. Normally you're lucky if you get people to stick to a diet for 6 months, and so that's why most dietary trials last a year at the most. This is reporting results from the first 3.5 years. Then came the 5.5-year follow-up. He adds another 100 patients. Then the 7-year follow-up, published in the Annals of Internal Medicine. Then the 20-year follow-up, the 34-year follow-up. How did they do? If you can get people early in their disease, when they're only mildly disabled, and restrict their saturated fat intake, Dr. Swank showed he could stop their disease in 95% of cases. No further disability 34 years later. But if they started slacking on their diet even years in, their disease could become reactivated. It felt so great, they were like, hey, I can cheat a little bit, I got this disease under control. But eating just 8 grams of saturated fat more a day was accompanied by a striking increase in disability and nearly tripling the death rate. How about a 50-year follow-up? They were able to track down 15 of the original patients that stuck to the diet, now in their 70s and 80s, with multiple sclerosis for over 50 years. And 13 out of 15 were walking around normal in all respects. They were active and, evidently, unusually youthful-looking. Conclusion: this study indicated that, in all probability, MS is caused largely by consumption of saturated animal fat. He thought it was the sludging of the blood caused by even a single meal of saturated fats that can clog tiny capillaries that feed our nervous system. See, diets rich in saturated fat and cholesterol can thicken the blood and make our red cells sticky. A single meal of sausage and eggs can stick our blood cells together like rolls of quarters. And this kind of hyperaggregation can lead to a reduction in blood flow and oxygenation of our tissues. If you put someone's blood through a machine that sucks out about 90% of the cholesterol in their blood, you can demonstrate an immediate improvement in microcirculation in the heart muscle. But what about the brain? Eyes are the windows to your brain. You can visualize in real time changes in blood vessel function in the retina at the back of the eye, which gives you a sense of what's happening further back in the brain. And if you lower the cholesterol level in the blood, you can immediately get a significant improvement in vasodilation. The little veins open wider and let the blood flow. So yes, it could be the saturated fat leading to clogging of our capillaries, but now we know animal fats can have all sorts of other deleterious effects, such as inflammation, so who knows what the actual mechanism may be by which cutting animal fat can cut MS progression. Regardless, patients with MS that follow a diet with no more than 10 or 15 grams of saturated fat can expect to survive and thrive to a ripe old age. Of course, cutting out saturated fat completely might be better, given that heart disease is our #1 killer. The bottom line is that the results Dr. Swank published remain the most effective treatment of multiple sclerosis ever reported in the peer-reviewed medical literature. In patients with early-stage MS, 95% were without progression of their disease 34 years later after adopting his low-saturated fat dietary program. Even patients with initially advanced disease showed significant benefit. To date, no medication or invasive procedure has has ever even come close to demonstrating such success. Doesn't cost $30,000, doesn't give you leukemia, and works better. Of course, this all begs one big obvious question. If Dr. Swank's results are so stunningly impressive, why haven't other physicians, neurologists, or centers adopted this method of treatment? Good question. One reason may be that MRI machines weren't invented until the 1970s. MRIs are how we track the progress of MS today. We don't have to rely on patients' subjective reports or doctors' clinical judgments. We can see the disease get better or worse right there in black and white. It's like in the 1970s when Nathan Pritikin appeared to reverse heart disease by the thousands, but no one took him seriously until angiography was invented, and the likes of Ornish and Esselstyn could hold up images like this, proving conclusively that a plant-based diet could literally open up arteries right there in black and white. So what we need is someone to repeat Swank's experiments today with MRI scans every step of the way, and I'm happy to report that exact experiment was just completed by Dr. John McDougall. Dr. Swank was one of Dr. McDougall's medical mentors, and Dr. McDougall is one of mine. Study enrollment was completed last year, and we should have the results sometime soon.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share for a moment. We're all back in the room together. And so pretty exciting. I hope that you gleaned from this that saturated fat is not a friend to you if you're interested in keeping symptoms down with an autoimmune disease such as multiple sclerosis or most any other autoimmune disease because of the inflammation that it causes. And it was rather interesting to note that decreasing the cholesterol level, you can actually see changes in the eyes where the vessels open up, dilate a bit. I found that very impressive. Anybody have any thoughts? We can take a couple comments and then get on to our next video. Anybody know of anyone with multiple sclerosis or have had it themselves and might want to know the name of the video or anything like that? Yeah, Doug. You know somebody. Okay, we can share the name of the video with you when I go back to the next one.
I've known some people.
You do?
Yeah, but they've long passed away from it.
Okay. So yeah, it's fairly prevalent.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm on a different computer, figuring out how to unmute myself. Yeah, I live in a senior community, and there's a lady 100 feet from me that has MS, advanced MS. And also I grew up across the street from a girl from the time I was 5 years old. She married a young man. He's just looked like the picture of health. He's a little guy. He's a defensive back on his high school football team. And he got MS, and we lived in the same community, and we'd see each other at soccer games where our kids were playing. And just really sad to watch him decline, and to think that if he'd had this knowledge, that may not have occurred. He died after a number of years. It was really sad to see his decline.
Yeah, it is very sad when we know that there may be something that could actually really help someone, and it just wasn't available, the knowledge. Even when it becomes available, it can be problematic, though. Go ahead.
Charlie, my best friend has MS.
Okay.
I gave her your name and number, but she's been vegan for years on a whole food plant-based diet for many years, and she's steadily getting worse.
Yeah, so the question is would she have progression at a more rapid rate if she were eating more saturated fat? The answer likely is yes. Does this stop every case of multiple sclerosis by being vegan? No. Vegans eat differently. Some people are eating a fair amount of oil in their diet. That's still vegan. And so I'd love to, talk with her, analyze what food she's actually putting in her mouth. If she's putting in foods that are actually foods that are grown in nature and not highly processed foods, she's maximizing doing the best she can to prevent further progression and to prevent other diseases. But if she hasn't quite reached that level of healthy food choices, then maybe we could encourage her in that direction.
We also had the video last week on the effect that salt has on MS in a bad way. So that's another one.
I told her that right away. I said, cut down your salt, Maggie.
Well, good. And maybe she'll chime in on some videos, whatever it is. Julia, you asked about what about McDougall's study? And Scott, if you want to address that, we addressed it in the in-person class the other night.
Sure, yeah. So the study was completed and it was only for 1 year, and it was the McDougall diet, so whole food plant-based diet. And it was a randomized trial, so but a lot of the people had more advanced disease, whereas Swank had those people in the early stages of disease where he showed the biggest improvements. So between the fact it was only a year, so it was pretty short term, they had a wide array of some early, but most were a little more advanced disease. And so they did better as far as they had less fatigue, they felt better. Of course, they lost weight, their cholesterol went down, blood pressure went down, so they got healthier, but there was not a statistically significant improvement in their overall MS symptoms or in their change in their MRIs. So it was not quite what we'd hoped, but but that's the way it is with science. You don't always get the outcome you want, but it was a good study. But there are a lot of cases like I have on the website under the video section, Dr. Sarai Stancic, who developed MS during her medical residency, and she completely put because hers was early because she caught it early, and then she ended up going on a whole food plant-based diet and healthy lifestyle on top of that, not just the diet, but also reducing stress and exercise and good sleep and all the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. She put her MS into complete remission and she ran a marathon. So, that's what we call anecdotal evidence, because that's a one case series. And then I know of many other cases I've heard about through this group where people actually had MRI reversal, where the lesions went away and everything. But when you do a randomized controlled trial, you have to that's a little bit higher level of evidence than just case controls and more anecdotes and stuff. So we got to always strive for the best science, but hopefully between the combination of the benefits that we're seeing in the trial, I mean, you look at Dr. Swank's work for all those years, and then look at some of the cases, there's always hope.
Yeah, and as far as you ask, does the type of MS matter? And Eric Colgrove, the pediatrician, addressed that. He said that he had a different type, which seemed to be more progressive. So I personally have not had experience with different types, other than I've always thought of it as some MS is rapidly progressive, some is not so progressive, and some becomes in remission, but more so with healthy lifestyle changes. Any other thoughts? Yes, Doug.
Just a general question: is 4 tablespoons of walnuts and 2 tablespoons of seeds inappropriate? Is that too much?
4 tablespoons.
I don't know what the weight is.
Yeah, it's the 4 tablespoons. Does that fit in the palm of your hand pretty much?
Yeah, it's a quarter of a cup.
Yeah, a quarter cup is that with the seeds. Sounds appropriate. Tablespoon or 2 of flax seeds or chia seeds along with your quarter cup of walnuts seems like a reasonable thing to do.
Thank you.
Okay, next video, then we'll have some more questions, perhaps. Okay, I'm going to share and come on back. Let's see, why do I not go? Why did this not go back? There we go. Multiple sclerosis. I'm going to go to potassium and autoimmune disorders. We talked about sodium last class.
Potassium is best known for lowering blood pressure and stroke risk, but a randomized double-blinded placebo-controlled trial of potassium supplementation was tried in patients with rheumatoid arthritis, published in the Journal of Pain. Rheumatoid arthritis is kind of the classic autoimmune inflammatory arthritis. Sufferers tend to have inappropriately low glucocorticoid levels, which are circulating steroid hormones like cortisol that suppress inflammation, and so low levels may allow for more inflammation. Glucocorticoids also help our kidneys excrete potassium, and so when we eat a lot of potassium, our adrenal glands secrete more glucocorticoids so we don't build up too much. And so maybe if you gave people with rheumatoid arthritis some extra potassium, it would boost steroid levels and help with the inflammation. So they bumped their daily intake up to 6,500 a day. Still not reflective of our evolutionary heritage, but at least they were making the cut for adequate intake. And indeed, higher potassium intake was associated with an improvement in rheumatoid arthritis and a lower disease activity and pain intensity, reflecting an anti-pain effect for potassium. And so they suggest planning a successful dietary regimen, including much more use of leafy vegetables. Those placed on a plant-based diet experience a significant increase in potassium intake, though even those eating vegan aren't eating enough greens on average. Maybe that bump in potassium helps explain why plant-based diets are so effective at treating rheumatoid arthritis. If this is the mechanism, though, if potassium-rich foods boost natural anti-inflammatory hormones in the body, then it should work for other inflammatory conditions too, right? Well, that's exactly what was suggested recently. Some studies have shown vegetarian diets improve psoriasis symptoms, for example. Maybe this is why speculating a cortisol-potassium theory is a novel mechanism for the beneficial effects of vegetarian diets.
Okay, so we're not talking about potassium pills. What are we talking about? Potassium that you get from the dark green leafy vegetables, or leafy vegetables. Okay, let's go to flax seeds and spices, and then we'll come back to the room and have some more questions. Write them down if you have something. We'll discuss it.
Previously, I've explored the potent antihypertensive effect of dietary flaxseed in hypertensive patients. This was a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial where they disguised ground flaxseed in baked goods versus like flax-free placebo muffins, and got an extraordinary drop in high blood pressures. As you can imagine, the flaxseed industry was overjoyed, praising the impressive findings, as was I. After all, high blood pressure is the single largest risk factor for death on the planet Earth. Yes, we give people medications, lots and lots of medications, but most people don't take them, as in 9 out of 10 people take less than 80% of the prescribed blood pressure pills, just 8%. It's not difficult to understand why. Patients are asked to follow an inconvenient, potentially costly regimen, which will likely have detrimental effect on their health-related quality of life, to treat a mostly asymptomatic condition, so they may feel worse instead of better due to the side effects. The answer, then, is to give them more drugs to counteract the effects of the first drugs, like giving men Viagra to counter the erectile dysfunction caused by their blood pressure pills. How about using a dietary strategy instead, especially if it can just be as effective? And indeed, the drop in blood pressures they got in the flaxseed study was greater than the average decrease observed with the standard dose of antihypertensive drugs. And flax seeds are cheaper, too, compared to even single medications, and most patients are on multiple drugs, and has good side effects beyond their antihypertensive actions, but not all good. Taking tablespoons of flaxseed a day is a lot of fiber for people who've been living off of cheeseburgers and milkshakes their whole lives, and it can take a little while for your gut bacteria to adjust to the new bounty. So people who start out with low-fiber diets may want to take it slow at first. Not all studies have shown significant blood pressure-lowering effects. There have been over a dozen trials by now, involving more than 1,000 subjects, and though yes, put them all together, and overall there were significant reductions in both systolic and diastolic blood pressures, the upper and lower numbers, following supplementation with various flaxseed products. None were as dramatic as that 6-month trial. The longer trials tended to show better results, and some of the trials just used flaxseed oil or some kind of flaxseed extract. And the thought is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Each of the components of interest within flaxseed, the omega-3s, the cancer-fighting lignans, all the soluble fiber and plant proteins, all contribute toward the blood pressure reduction. OK, but how? Why? Right? What's the mechanism? Some common blood pressure medications like Norvasc or Procardia work by reducing the ability of the heart to contract, or slowing the heart down. And so it's possible that's how flax seeds work too, but no. Dietary flaxseed reduces blood pressure without cardiac involvement, but rather through changes in plasma oxylipins. What are oxylipins? Oxylipins are a group of fatty acid metabolites involved in inflammation, and as a result have been implicated in many pro-inflammatory conditions, including cardiovascular disease and aging. The best characterized oxylipins in relation to cardiovascular disease are derived from the long-chain omega-6 fatty acids known as arachidonic acid, found preformed in animal products, particularly chicken and eggs, and can be made inside the body from junky omega-6 rich oils such as cottonseed oil. But elevated levels of pro-inflammatory oxylipins in older subjects are normalized by flaxseed consumption. See, that's how he thinks flaxseed consumption reduces blood pressure in patients with hypertension, by inhibiting the enzyme that makes these pro-inflammatory oxylipins. I'll spare you from the acronym overload, but basically, eating flax seeds inhibits the activity of the enzyme that makes these pro-inflammatory oxylipins, called leukotoxin-diols, which in turn may lower blood pressure. Identifying the molecular mechanisms adds confidence to the antihypertensive actions of dietary flaxseed, but that's not all oxylipins do. Oxylipins may play a role in the aging process, but we may be able to beneficially disrupt these biological changes associated with inflammation and aging with nutritional intervention like flaxseed. Older adults around age 50 have higher levels of these arachidonic acid-derived oxylipins compared to younger adults around age 20. And these elevated concentrations of pro-inflammatory oxylipins in the older age group may help explain the higher levels of inflammation in older versus younger individuals. I mean, as we get older, right, we're more likely to be stricken with inflammatory conditions like arthritis. So this elevation of pro-inflammatory oxylipins may predispose individuals to chronic disease conditions. But what if you took these older adults and gave them muffins, ground flaxseed-containing muffins? 4 weeks later, their levels dropped to here, right? Down to like 20-year-old levels, demonstrating that a potential therapeutic strategy to correct the deleterious pro-inflammatory oxylipin profile is via dietary supplementation with flax.
I don't know if you got all excited about Dr. Greger's movement and his hands and his face, but let's get on to the next video on spices, and then we'll get back to the oxylipins.
Once in a while, I come across a study that's so juicy I do an entire video about it. It's like my which fruit fights cancer better video, or the best cooking method one, or that one comparing thousands of foods? Well, this is one such study. A group of researchers at U of F, Gainesville, and Penn State set up an elegant experiment. We've known ounce per ounce that herbs and spices have some of the greatest antioxidant activities known, but that's in a test tube. Before we can ask if an herb or spice has health benefits, it's first necessary to determine whether it's bioavailable. This has never been done until now. They could have went the easy route and just measured the change in antioxidant level in one's bloodstream before and after consumption, but the assumption that the appearance of antioxidant activity in the blood is an indicator of bioavailability has a weakness. Maybe more gets absorbed than we think, but doesn't show up on antioxidant tests because it gets bound up to protein or cells, so they attempted to measure physiological changes in the blood. They were interested in whether absorbed compounds would be able to protect white blood cells from an oxidative or inflammatory injury, whether it would protect the strands of our DNA from breaking when confronted by free radicals. They also wondered if the consumption of herbs and spices might alter cellular inflammatory responses in the presence of a physiologically relevant inflammatory insult. What does this all mean? Well, what they did was take a bunch of people and had each of them eat different types of spices for a week. There's so many really unique things about this study, but one was that the quantity that study subjects consumed was based on the usual levels of consumption in actual food. Like, the oregano group was given a half teaspoon a day, the kinds of practical quantities people might actually eat once in a while. Then at the end of the week, they drew blood from the dozen or so people they had adding black pepper to their diets that week, and compared the effects of their blood to the effects of the blood of the dozen on cayenne, or cinnamon, or cloves, or cumin. They had about 10 different groups of people eating about 10 different spices. Then they dripped their plasma, the liquid fraction of their blood, onto human white blood cells in a petri dish that had been exposed to an inflammatory insult. They wanted to pick something really inflammatory, so they chose oxidized cholesterol, which is like what you'd get in your bloodstream after eating something like fried chicken. So they jabbed the white blood cells with oxidized cholesterol and then measured how much TNF they produced in response. Tumor necrosis factor is a powerful inflammatory cytokine, infamous for the role it plays in autoimmune attacks like inflammatory bowel disease. Compared to the blood of those who ate no spices for a week, was the blood of those eating black pepper able to significantly dampen the inflammatory response? No. What about any of these other spices? Cloves, ginger, rosemary, and turmeric were able to significantly stifle the inflammatory response. And remember, they weren't dripping the spices themselves on these human white blood cells, but the blood of those who ate the spices. And so it represents what might happen when cells in our body are exposed to the levels of spices that circulate in our bloodstream after normal daily consumption. Not mega doses in some pill, just the amount that makes our spaghetti sauce taste good, or our pumpkin pie, or curry sauce. There are drugs that can do the same thing. Tumor necrosis factors are such major mediators of inflammation and inflammation-related diseases that there are these TNF-blocking drugs on the market for the treatment of inflammatory diseases like osteoarthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, psoriasis, ankylosing spondylitis, which rake in collectively more than $20 billion a year, because drug companies charge people $15,000 to $20,000 a year for the drug. At that price, the side effects better be hugs and rainbows, but no, these drugs carry a black label warning because they can cause things like cancer, heart failure. If only there were a cheaper, safer solution. Curcumin, the yellow pigment in turmeric, a spice that's a tad cheaper and safer, but does it work outside of a test tube? There's evidence that it may help in all the diseases for which TNF blockers are currently being used. And so with healthcare costs and safety being such major issues, this golden spice turmeric may help provide the solution.
Okay, so we have a few more videos that you see that we want to try to get through here, but I'm going to stop the share for now, and we'll take one or two questions. And then we're going to go back. And the next section we're going to do is fibromyalgia, then osteoarthritis, and then thyroid. That's a lot to cover. We have a half an hour plus another 4 minutes. So are there any questions about what you've seen? Vonda?
I was curious, Dr. Greger kept talking about flax seeds, and he didn't mention flax meal, which I learned from you and Scott to grind it up, keep the meal in the fridge for up to 30 days, and throw it out because it'll get bad. He just never mentioned the flax meal.
So it's just equally as effective. The flax seeds allow you to keep it on the counter for months, whereas the flax meal, once it's ground up, it can spoil more quickly, like over a month or however long is what he said.
So it's
keep it in
okay.
the refrigerator, but it's the same benefit.
So you can eat whole flax seeds. I thought they just ran through
if
your
you
body.
eat the whole flax seed, it'll go right through you. You won't get the omega-3. You have to grind it.
Okay, okay.
So if you're using flax seeds, you grind it every day.
Right.
And
but
in
it's
the
okay.
in the in the study that he showed about the muffins, they definitely used the flax meal because otherwise the seeds would just wouldn't even be a placebo because you'd see them. So it's flax meal you would use to make the muffins in that study.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? I would spend more time and take more questions, but I want to try to get through this as best as we can. And fibromyalgia is a really important one. Now, how much flaxseed meal is recommended daily? A tablespoon. Tablespoon of flaxseed meal every day is what Greger recommends. And some people choose to do 2, but whatever. Okay, let's go on to back to the share, back to the room. And I've got come on. Why are you not cooperating? I've got that little thing. The video thumbnails are minimized. Okay, that's good. Let's get that. Okay, aspartame and fibromyalgia. Let's deal with this first.
Reported for the first time recently, case reports of aspartame-induced fibromyalgia, an unusual but curable cause of chronic pain. 50-year-old woman had been suffering from widespread pain and fatigue for more than 10 years, leading to the diagnosis of fibromyalgia. But during a vacation in a foreign country, she did not suffer from painful symptoms and made a connection with the fact that she had forgotten to take her aspartame. All the symptoms reappeared in the days following her return when she reintroduced aspartame into her daily diet, but when it was definitively excluded from her diet, resulted in a complete regression of her fibromyalgia symptoms after 10 years of suffering. 43-year-old man consulted for a 3-year history of bilateral forearm, wrist, and hand and neck pain, various unsuccessful treatments. A detailed questioning followed to find out that he had been taking aspartame for 3 years. The removal of aspartame was followed by a complete regression of pain without recurrence. The benefit-risk ratio of considering the diagnosis of aspartame-induced chronic pain is obvious. The potential benefit is to cure a disabling chronic illness, right? To spare numerous laboratory and imaging investigations, and to avoid potentially harmful therapies. The potential risk is what? To temporarily change the patient's diet? Thus, practitioners should ask patients suffering from fibromyalgia about their intake of aspartame. In some cases, this simple question might lead to the resolution of a disabling chronic disease. And fibromyalgia is no small pain in the neck, affecting an estimated 5 million Americans who should all be asked that simple question.
So that brings us back to the artificial sweeteners and how they can affect our hormone balance and our pain levels and whatever. So be careful about eating processed foods. And then we get on here, fibromyalgia versus mostly raw. By the way, you can take a snapshot of this screen, and you can see these. You can obtain these videos on YouTube or on Dr. Greger's site, most of them. That's where I got them from. They're free, and you should be able to access them. If you take a camera photo of it, we'll be coming back for just a couple more. We're going to play this video and then the next one.
Raw vegan diets seem to really help reduce fibromyalgia symptoms. But what about just a mostly raw diet? That was tried next. Fibromyalgia engulfs patients in a downward, reinforcing cycle of unrestorative sleep, chronic pain, fatigue, inactivity, and depression. So they tested whether a mostly raw, and actually vegan diet, would significantly improve fibromyalgia symptoms, and boy did it. FIQ is the standard survey designed specifically to measure the impact of fibromyalgia on a person's life. At the beginning of the study, they were doing pretty bad. By 2 months, though, they were doing significantly better, and by the end of the study, at 7 months, there were significant improvements in each one of these measures, so less physical impairment. They were feeling better, less absenteeism, less pain, fatigue, stiffness, anxiety, depression. In summary, a diet intervention using a mostly raw, pure vegetarian diet produced dramatic improvements in fibromyalgia syndrome symptoms. When this study was reviewed by Current Rheumatology Reports, the editor noted that it had the most impressive results of any recent fibromyalgia treatment study. For example, nearly 3 times the improvement that the Mayo Clinic reported for their fibromyalgia program. Yes, it was not a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, but as they note, it's difficult to design such a study when it comes to diet, since people tend to notice when they've switched to a vegan diet. So, raw vegan diets worked. Mostly raw vegan diets worked. Even just eating vegetarian seemed to help. What about just eating mostly vegetarian? That was the one tried most recently. Fibromyalgia symptoms put on a mostly vegetarian diet for 2 weeks and did not see any significant improvement. Maybe if they gave it more time, we don't know. Bottom line is that the best available science to date suggests eating plant-based diets, whether vegetarian or vegan, may help people with fibromyalgia. Just because the best science we have doesn't mean it's necessarily very good science, right? These were all very small, poorly controlled, relatively short-term studies. But what's the downside of giving it a try? Turns out that people with chronic widespread pain syndromes tend to eat pretty crappy diets, perhaps explaining their higher rates of other chronic diseases such as cancer and cardiovascular disease. So even if a healthy diet doesn't help their fibromyalgia symptoms, at least it may prevent them from falling ill with something else. The last thing someone who feels miserable all day needs is another disease.
So we'll come back to fibromyalgia after the next video. The next video is on osteoarthritis. It's a common pain syndrome, a lot of knee replacements, hip replacements. You probably know someone, or maybe you've had it yourself, and you're wondering, does food really make a difference, or other lifestyle changes? And this video addresses the best knee replacement alternatives for osteoarthritis. It's a really good video.
The largest study in history on the health effects of being overweight, analyzing data from more than 50 million people from nearly 200 countries, found that excess body weight accounts for the premature deaths of about 4 million people every year. Most of these deaths are from heart disease, but the researchers found convincing or probable evidence linking obesity to 20 different disorders, a veritable alphabet soup of potential health concerns. In the ABCs of health consequences, A is for arthritis. Obesity can make rheumatoid arthritis worse and increase the risk of another inflammatory joint disease, the so-called disease of King's gout. The most common joint disease in the world, though, is osteoarthritis, and obesity may be the main modifiable risk factor. Osteoarthritis develops when the cushioning cartilage lining of joints breaks down faster than your body can build it back up. The knees are the most commonly affected, leading to the assumption that the relation to obesity was simply the excess wear and tear from the added load on the joints. But non-weight-bearing joints like the hands and the wrists can also be affected, suggesting the link isn't purely mechanical. Obesity-related dyslipidemia may be playing a role, with elevations in the amounts of triglycerides, fat, and cholesterol in the blood, aggravating inflammation in the joints, just like cholesterol can aggravate the inflammation in your artery walls. Osteoarthritis sufferers not only have higher cholesterol levels in the blood, they have higher cholesterol levels within their joints, both in aspirated joint fluid and in the cartilage itself. Drip cholesterol on human cartilage in a petri dish, and you can worsen the inflammatory degeneration, helping to explain why the higher people's cholesterol, the worse their disease. Cholesterol-lowering statin drugs may both help prevent and treat osteoarthritis, as can a cholesterol-lowering diet. A healthy enough plant-based diet may offer the best of both worlds, dropping cholesterol as much as a starting dose of a statin drug within a single week, and only has good side effects such as lowering blood pressure and facilitating weight loss. Even just losing about a pound a year over the span of a decade may decrease the odds of developing osteoarthritis by more than 50%. Weight reduction may even obviate the need for knee replacement surgery. Obese arthritis sufferers randomized to lose weight improve their knee function as much as those going through surgery within just 8 weeks. The researchers concluded that losing 20 pounds of fat might be regarded as an alternative to knee replacement. Isn't it easier to just get your knees replaced than lose 20 pounds? Rarely discussed is the fact that nearly 1 in 200 knee replacement patients die within 90 days of surgery. Given the extreme popularity of this operation, about 700,000 a year in the U.S., an orthopedics journal editor suggested that people considering this operation are inadequately attuned to the possibility it may kill them. Arguably the single most salient fact to share with a patient considering the operation. An orthopedic surgeon responded questioning whether patients should be told about the chance the operation may kill them. Quote, "To me, the real question is whether this knowledge will help the patient. Will it add to the anxiety of the already anxious patient, perhaps to the point of denying that patient a helpful operation? Or will this knowledge motivate a less handicapped patient to stick to a diet and physical activity regime?" Ultimately, then, the question boils down to the surgeon's judgment. Unquote. Even among the vast majority who survive the surgery, approximately 1 in 5 knee replacement patients describe being unsatisfied with the outcome. Weight loss with a healthy diet, on the other hand, may offer a non-surgical alternative that instead treats the cause and offers only beneficial side effects.
He drives a hard bargain. He makes a very good arguments for, choosing the option of losing weight instead of doing knee replacements. And yet it's been so hard to help patients do that. But hopefully classes like this will help some patients, hopefully many patients. And we've seen that happen. The more people that do this, the more support our culture will have. Any thoughts before we get on to thyroid? We've got about 5 minutes to a few questions we might be able to answer. Any thoughts from anyone? Any questions? Wasn't it interesting about the flax seeds and how the flax, whatever the plant chemicals in the flaxseed inhibit the enzyme, which would normally convert some lipids to oxylipids, which cause inflammation. So flax seeds decrease inflammation in your body. That doesn't mean you have to take 2 cups full. They've got a pretty high calorie density, 2,500 calories a pound, sort of like any other nuts and seeds. But
Pretty
still,
fascinating when I've been eating them for the most part for a year and a half because you guys told me to, but I didn't know why. So that was helpful.
well, glad you enjoyed that. Yes, Karen.
I was curious on the muffins. They actually still have the benefit after baking, so it
Yes.
doesn't have to be raw.
Correct.
Okay, great.
All right. We're getting excited. Geared up to do a little cooking. Any other thoughts from anyone? Okay, we're going to go to thyroid, and then after we get done with thyroid, it's another 12 minutes. It's Dr. Neil Barnard. I love listening to this man. He is always, gosh, I wish I could be like him at times. And let's see, I'm going to share my screen. And okay, there we've got the share going. Now I've got to get back over to a new video portion. And I'm going to go down to the thyroid. Here we go, thyroid issues. And then we're going over to healthy thyroid, the secret ingredient. And then I've got to start at about 8 minutes. It's one of those podcasts that you had mentioned earlier.
What does it mean to limit oils?
Like it's something that they have to deal with, but
it's a huge deal. So many people are either frankly hypothyroid or they're just kind of on the borderline. The doctor's not too sure what to do about it, but the way you feel it is just exactly what you were saying. You get up in the morning, you stand on the scale and you think, how can this be? You know, after all my effort, I'm not losing any weight, or your weight is going up a pound, and your energy is not so hot, and you don't feel like yourself. So let's do Thyroid 101. I want to share my screen with you. The healthy thyroid, it oversees your body's use of energy. So what if I'm hypothyroid? Okay, there's the thyroid gland. It's sort of shaped like a butterfly. It's at the base of your neck. You can barely even feel it there in your neck, but it's there. And it's going to send thyroid hormone to all the cells of your body to give them energy. So let's say I'm hypothyroid. I'm kind of low on the gas, so to speak. I'll feel weak. I'll feel easily fatigued, and you will tend to feel cold. Other people in the room will think, I'm all right, but you don't feel well. You feel cold, your digestive tract is shutting down, and then there's that weight gain coming in, but your mood is shutting down as well. You're feeling kind of depressed and crummy, and if you look in the mirror, you think, my skin isn't right. My hair seems kind of dry. What's going on here? Okay, now the opposite can happen. Hyperthyroidism means you've got too much thyroid hormone. Hypothyroidism means too little thyroid hormone. Hyperthyroidism, too much. And for the most part, you see weight loss that you didn't intend. Once in a while, you'll see somebody who's had weight gain when they're hyperthyroid. That's a little unusual, but it can happen. And now your pulse is speeding up, or it's irregular. Your thought processes are kind of on edge. You're nervous, you're irritable. And now hypothyroid, cold, hyperthyroid, warm. You might have a tremor, have trouble sleeping, and again, your hair doesn't seem right. Okay, it's funny that a little organ like that can do all of these things, but it sure can. So let's dig into the weeds a little bit. This is thyroid hormone. Can you see this? Okay, see those big purple dots there? That's iodine. And you need iodine to make thyroid hormone. So why would anybody ever be low? Well, in 1924, the Morton Company started selling iodized salts. It's the blue canister with the girl with the umbrella on it. Okay, they've added a little iodine to salt. And I got to tell you, that really pretty much eliminated iodine deficiency in the United States. Not every country has iodized salt, but the United States does. And you only need 150 micrograms of iodine a day so that your thyroid has what it needs. So how could you go wrong? Well, we are modern people, and so I might have sea salt or Himalayan salt or kosher salt that may not be iodized, unless if it's not labeled as such, then it's not. And so as time goes on, you're stepping on the scale and you're gaining some weight and your energy's not so hot and you're just low in thyroid. You're low in iodine, so your thyroid gland can't make it and you're hypothyroid. Worldwide, that's the biggest reason for being hypothyroid is just a lack of iodine. So you can get it through iodized salt. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't want to have salt in my diet. You don't need much. If you have even about maybe a quarter or a third of a teaspoon of iodized salt, that will add to the iodine in your diet. So you don't need a huge amount. And you actually do need some sodium in your diet. About 1,500 milligrams a day would be normal for people to have. So a zero sodium diet you don't want. Now, the dairy industry will say, well, there is iodine in dairy products. That's true. But once you find out how it got there, you might not want to choose that source. A cow's udder can get dragged through the mud. It can get tainted with feces, or milk can get all crusted over it. And so the dairy industry will, as on a routine basis, use a disinfectant that gets painted on the teats of the udder. And it contains iodine. And so some of that disinfectant, which has the iodine, will get into the milk as a contaminant. And so it carries the iodine with it. So one of the big reasons why milk has iodine in it is it's part of the disinfectant that was used on the cows, not the best source. Cows are also sometimes supplemented with iodine, but they don't actually make it. But I got to tell you, my favorite source is sea vegetables, or as we used to call them when I was growing up, seaweed. So let's say you go to a sushi bar. Don't have the fish sushi unless you're very well insured, but you have a cucumber roll or an asparagus roll or a sweet potato roll or something like that. That nori seaweed that it's wrapped in, that nori is loaded with healthy iodine. Okay, now also wakame. You got some miso soup, the little strips of wakame seaweed, very high in iodine as well. And in my book, Your Body in Balance, I have a recipe for arame cucumber salad. If you never have had arame, you really have to try this. It's at every health food store, every Asian food store. It's an extremely fine, delicate seaweed. And you slice some cucumbers really thin, put a little tiny bit of salt on them, and then put some soaked arame on top, just a tiny bit, and a little seasoned rice vinegar. It's the most just very light, delightful salad. So the point here is that a lot of Americans aren't familiar with sea vegetables. We just, it's not something you have in Omaha or Fargo where I grew up. But when you get to know them, you're getting iodine. If you're missing all of that, you can get iodine supplements at the store. Often they are sold as kelp. Kelp is a seaweed, and sometimes it's a little drop, sometimes it's a little pill, and it will typically contain around the 150 micrograms that you need, and there you go. So, as I mentioned, worldwide, the biggest reason why people are low in thyroid is they're not getting iodine. In the United States, most people are getting iodine, but they're still having thyroid problems. What's the issue for them? The issue for them is antibodies. Antibodies are proteins. They're made in your body to attack viruses and to attack bacteria and to knock them out. For some reason, your body is making antibodies that are attacking your thyroid gland. And this will not be on the test, but there are several different antibodies that doctors can test for you. And if they discover that you've got antibodies to your thyroid, some of them will make the thyroid gland not function very well. Some antibodies attack the control mechanism, so the thyroid can't turn off. And now, because of antibodies, your thyroid is running overtime and you end up hyperthyroid. So the diagnostic names, if you've got antibodies attacking your thyroid and shutting it down, that's Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Most common reason for low thyroid in the United States. It's named after a Dr. Hashimoto in Japan. If your thyroid gland can't turn off because antibodies are keeping it from turning off, that's called Graves' disease. And it doesn't mean it's a particularly grave disease. It was named after a Dr. Robert Graves. And that's a very common reason for hyperthyroidism. Okay, so can foods affect this? Yes, remember what I was saying. Antibodies are forming against your thyroid gland. Foods may be the trigger for it. At the Adventist Health Study 2, which had almost 66,000 people in it, they discovered that vegans had the least risk for hypothyroidism, and lacto-ovo vegetarians, people who are not eating meat, but they're making up for it with cheese, ice cream, milk, other dairy products, they were at the highest risk of hypothyroidism. And look at hyperthyroidism. Vegans, again, do the best. People who are omnivores, in other words, they're eating meat and dairy and eggs, they have dramatically more hyperthyroidism than other people. So what we suspect is happening is that your body is seeing proteins that are coming from meat, from dairy products, maybe from eggs, thinking that these are proteins coming from a virus, making antibodies to them, and those antibodies end up attacking your thyroid gland. So why do vegans do better? Because they're not consuming those kinds of proteins. And so their body is not reacting. That's what we think is happening. Is it true? There was a good case control study back in 2017. They looked at people who had thyroid antibodies and they compared them to healthy controls. And what they found is yes, people who ate more vegetables and legumes, meaning beans, dried fruits, nuts, and muesli for some reason, these tended to mean they were less likely to develop antibodies. But if you ate a lot of butter, animal fats, that sets you up for having these antibodies. So what we think is happening is that animal products are inflammatory. They're causing this attack on the thyroid, and plant foods can be anti-inflammatory, partly because they don't have the animal proteins in it, partly because they have antioxidants and healthy omega-3s. All right, let me just finish. I want to share with you some success stories. This is Mike. Mike is a neurosurgeon in North Carolina, 52 years old. He was in good health. And around age 45, his TSH was climbing. Now, what is TSH? TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone. If your thyroid is sluggish, your body makes more TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, to get it going. It's trying to push it. And so you want it to be below 4. Some doctors would say even lower than that. His was 4.2, that's too high. And it eventually climbed to 5.1. So he began a plant-based diet. What happened? His TSH fell from 5.1 down to 2.9, and he started feeling a lot better. He lost 7 or 8 pounds. He had increased energy. In other words, that sluggish thyroid gland was getting repaired, working again, so his body didn't need to push it with more TSH. The healthy diet was getting him going. Okay, this is Wendy. Now, if Mike had hypothyroidism, Wendy was the opposite. She was 47. She started having reduced sleep. Somehow her weight started coming up. She felt hyper. And her mood was like it was on grease. She wasn't herself. Her doctor said, you've got low TSH. Low thyroid stimulating hormone means that your thyroid is working overtime. And she had the thyroid antibodies, and she had classic hyperthyroidism. Well, she was in New York. She went to hear a lecture by a doctor about plant-based diets. She decided to try it. She went vegan and also went gluten-free, and she went home. She was doing this diet, and she checked her thyroid gland again. She went to the doctor's office, got a blood test, and was waiting for the results, and the phone never rang. She finally called the doctor's office and said, I want my lab results. And the doctor's office said, well, we only call you if there's a problem. She said, but I have a problem. I'm hyperthyroid. And the doctor's office said, no, you're not. You're totally normal. In other words, she went on a healthy diet. Her thyroid completely returned to absolutely normal. This is Jean. Jean's 59 years old. She was a teacher. She was fatigued. She was overweight.
I'm going to stop there. I just wanted to give you a little sampling, and I want to have time for a few questions. Any thoughts from anyone? Questions? Now's the time. Quiet room. It's okay. Doug, you just waving your hand, or you want to unmute? Go ahead.
I I was hospitalized with COVID a couple months back, and they did blood tests. My potassium was high, my sodium was low. I had been, because my blood pressure crept up a little bit, I stopped adding salt. And regarding the iodine anyway, I eat a lot of canned beans, canned corns, canned tomatoes, and I called manufacturers of six different manufacturers of canners of foods, and they all use non-iodized salt. So by not eating table salt, I wasn't getting any iodine.
Good point. So hopefully you've listened to this and you somehow give some thought to where am I getting my iodine in my diet. And we encourage you to do sea vegetables like dulse or wakame or nori. And that may take a little getting used to. The first time I ever tasted dulse, I swore I'd never eat it again. And now I eat it every morning and I kind of crave it actually. But I had to train myself. It's not one of those foods that everybody likes initially. Nancy.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm in a hiking club, and it just seems like there's so many people who are getting knee replacement, and none of them are overweight by, maybe a few pounds, but not obese. And I'm just wondering if it's because their diet tends to be anti-inflammatory and they're getting knee problems because, I don't know. I'm just curious about why they would be getting.
So you can have inflammation going on inside your body and not be overweight. You can be eating foods that break down into free radicals that cause chronic inflammation. You could be having a lot of stress in your life, leading to chronic inflammation. So there are a number of factors. And, we live in a society which we have a lot of orthopedic surgeons. And if you have knee pain, rather than doing the rehab for it or whatever was done in the old days, you didn't live as long as you do these days. They tend to want to replace it, and, I kind of get that. Go ahead, Scott.
You also saw in Gregor's video, it's not just mechanical from weight, it's actually also cholesterol that gets in there and causes the inflammation too. So there's more to it than just the weight.
Good point.
This summer I had some knee issues, and I didn't really think it was osteoarthritis, but I don't know, my mom had her knees replaced, so I always get worried, And so when I went for my check,
we have a lot to worry about. We're told to go get a DEXA scan and worry about our bones and whether they're floating away. We're told to get the cardiac calcium score, and we're worried that we're going to have the heart attack. And what do we do about that? And it all boils down to a good degree of making healthier lifestyle choices.
There was just mild osteoarthritis, at 75, hey, little osteoarthritis probably. But I finally figured out what it probably was, that they never tried, I didn't go specifically for that, but they didn't try a diagnosis. But I think what it was a tendonitis issue. Because after about 2 months, it totally went away. And by the time I hiked the Inca Trail, I was fine. That was the August.
Well, fortunately, you treated this conservatively and you got better. Congratulations.
I know. I still worry about getting arthritis. Anyway.
All right. Who's next? Any other thoughts? Any other questions? Suggestions? We went over a lot of stuff today. So may have felt a little bit staccato or whatever the terminology would be, but go ahead, Vonda.
I just wanted to share something. I listened to Dylan and Reeves Holmes. They are Well Your World on YouTube. They're whole food plant-based, and they have their own salad dressings, barbecue sauce, ketchup, seasonings, soups, and they're all SOS free. And I just bought their veggie broth powder, and I made soup with it a couple times, and it's wonderful. And it's so much better and healthier for anyone than buying even the low sodium broth in the boxes at the stores. And just want to share that I found that gem, and it's awesome.
Thanks for sharing that. Are you going to put it in Facebook?
Yeah, I can. Sure.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Scott, what's coming up next week?
Yeah, we have a special guest, Hope Bohannic, and it's about greenwashing your food, that sustainable labels or labels don't show sustainability. So it's all about the environment, how our food choices affect the environment. So it's not just always about our health and health of our loved ones, but also the health of the planet. So hope you guys tune in for that. She'll be doing it twice for us. So she'll do it in person this coming Friday at the Irving Grange, and then she'll be here a week from tonight, and she'll do it here online as well. So come on out.
So this week our class size increased by a couple people, thanks to Kim. Welcome to everyone. We invite you back. Bring some other friends and family. The class sizes are pretty much unlimited at this point in time, so there's plenty of room. And it's been awful lot of fun with you all tonight. Hope you learned a few things, and we look forward to being with you next week.
We learned a few things. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good night.
You guys have a good night too.